This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over the cost of pool ownership, some things that you may not know, and some things to be aware of if you're looking for a house with a pool, or if you're looking to build a pool. I'll go over some cost breakdowns and some current costs and some future costs that you may incur with pool ownership. Join my coaching program and take your pool service to the next level. Connect with other pool pros in your area, gain valuable knowledge, and transform your business with personalized one-on-one advice from me. With over 36 years of experience, I'm here to help you succeed like never before. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. And I think there's nothing better when you have kids growing up, or if you want to make your yard that kind of meeting place for your family. A backyard pool can be that particular item or the kind of gathering place that you can create. So a lot of people look for a house with a pool, and it used to be, maybe up until 5 or 6 years ago, that a house with a pool was actually more of a liability. It was hard to sell. People weren't really looking at it. Well, there was a couple of schools of thought. Maybe I'll go a little further back. Let's just go back about 8 years, where you can actually build a pool pretty affordably. And so a lot of people were looking for a house with some land that they can actually build their own pool, because they wanted their own design. They wanted to build a pool to their liking. But if you fast forward to today, you'll realize that building a pool is really expensive and maybe uneconomical for a lot of families. Now, I've quoted this before, and people just are flabbergasted. They think that I'm making up these numbers, but truly a 15 by 30, 3 feet to 6 foot deep pool here in Los Angeles County, which is standard coping, standard equipment, is about $130,000 to have that built in your backyard. It's a crazy number, and it's really inflated because of the cost of the materials, cost of labor, shortages, things like that have caused the cost of pools to quadruple in less than 8 years, basically, in cost. And there's something to consider when you're having a pool built, or if you want to have a pool built, that it's going to cost you a small fortune, not just because of the current prices, but because of the interest rates as well. To fund a project like this, either your home equity line or getting a loan to fund the pool, you're looking at a pretty high interest rate, 8 or maybe even 9%, which means that this project has gotten much more expensive and could be one of the reasons why pool building is kind of down lately over the boom of the COVID time when everyone was having a pool built. And the costs were, of course, still high, but probably substantially lower than they are today. I think it's far more economical to purchase a house with a pool if you can live with how the pool is, that is, without having to remodel it, because remodeling is going to cost some money as well. So look for a home that has a pool that's pretty modern, or a pool maybe that is okay and you can kind of use it and live with it. I think that's fair to say that that's probably the better direction to go than buying a house or getting land, or actually getting a house with some land in the backyard and then building a pool back there. The expenses of doing that are pretty much outweigh any benefits of the pool, at least in Los Angeles County. I'm speaking specifically for my region. So there are a lot of other costs associated with pool ownership that have risen dramatically. And I'm going to use the COVID era as kind of my, baseline. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was really affordable. Pools were really affordable in many ways, not just building the pool, but in also maintaining the pool. After the COVID-19 pandemic, because of a lot of factors, and if you study economics, there was a lot of things going on that caused hyperinflation, which when prices go up, they rarely, if ever, go back down. And these factors were in play during that time that caused this kind of inflation that we're seeing now currently. Basically, when prices in the industry have skyrocketed 100%, in some cases over 100% for certain chemicals and certain products, the manufacturers really have no reason to lower them back down. I'll give you the trichlor tablets as a good example. Actually, the prices are a little bit lower than the peak of summer right now, but I would anticipate them to start creeping up to the price that we paid during the summer. But I'm just using retail numbers here. So if you go back to 2020, the 50-pound bucket of tablets was right around $98 retail. The Pool Pro can get them for about $80, sometimes $78. That's the lowest I've gotten them for back then, maybe $85. But the retail price was right around $99, roughly there. So today, they're about $195 for a 50-pound bucket, which is, again, better than it was in the summer. It may go up again when summer starts. They probably have a pretty big supply of them because everyone stocked up on them. At some point, forever ago, they were just buying these tablets to keep an inventory of them because they were so expensive. I think they peaked, don't quote me here, but I'm pretty sure they peaked retail at about $300, roughly right around $300 during the COVID era. And they've gone down quite a bit, but they're still up 100% to where they were in 2020, which is a pretty gigantic increase in any kind of cost. If you look at eggs, for example, they're up like 150% or even 200%. So you get an idea that certain products can jump up. Now, egg prices probably will drop back down once the supply is back in the industry, whereas I don't think trichlor tablets will drop down for a number of reasons. Number one, the demand is still pretty high for them. Number two, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of labor, the cost of transportation has gone up over the last 5 years. So it's not just, a high demand or a short supply. All of this had to kind of happen in conjunction with the biolab factory burning back, in 2020, right before COVID, causing a chlorine shortage. So it was all a perfect storm for the chemical industry back then. But the cost of the buckets, the plastic buckets, also has gone up tremendously in the last 5 years. And with the possibility of increased tariffs everywhere, I think the cost of everything is still going to stay pretty much inflated. So there's the expensive chemicals, and this is just one example of how chemicals have gone up in cost. Muriatic acid has also skyrocketed because, believe it or not, it's actually based on the similar formula to what they make liquid chlorine. So if chlorine goes up, acid prices will actually go up as well. So that's one cost that has been elevated and is staying elevated is your chemical cost. So if you have a pool, if you're going to buy a house at a pool, realize that you're going to be paying a lot of money for those chemicals that maintain that particular pool. With the chemicals going up, of course, the cost of pool equipment has gone up quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years as well. So everything is more expensive. A pump, a motor, the filter, the heater, that's all gone up in price. Now, there are a few things that have happened over the last decade that have helped with the cost of electricity or the cost of running the pool pump. And that's the advent of the variable speed pump that's kind of propagating the market. They're pretty much dominating sales of pumps, at least in Los Angeles County, which will save you significantly on your electric bill or your energy costs. So that's one thing that's been a good thing over the last 10 years, with a lot of major manufacturers making really energy efficient pumps. But that's just a small silver lining, I suppose, in the fact that everything has gotten much more expensive. Natural gas has gotten really expensive, so most of the heaters here in California, because of the environment, because of the temperature, how it's set up here in California, a natural gas heater is far superior to a heat pump. Heat pumps run off electricity and they don't have the same capacity as a gas heater dealing with really low temperatures. And it's something that I think in California, the gas heater is still dominating the market. Very few heat pumps, but that might be changing because California is, of course, regulating natural gas to the point where builders won't be able to put in a natural gas heater in the future. But however, currently natural gas prices are pretty elevated. So if you were to heat your pool for a pool party, let's say you want to have a party in November or in March, sometime when the water's still really cold, maybe in the 60s, and you want to heat it to 85 degrees, expect a pretty hefty gas bill that month. There's also limits that you may cross over, thresholds, and it may be somewhere for just that one day, somewhere in the range of $150 for that gas bill. I'm not kidding. It's really expensive for gas. Then it has gone down slightly over the peak. I think it peaked roughly about 8 or 9 months ago was the peak of it, and things have slowly gotten a little better here. But the price of natural gas is still going to be really expensive over, even electricity is expensive. If you wanted to go to a heat pump, there's a lot of retrofitting you have to do at the equipment pad. You have to put in a dedicated 230 volt line. So that costs money as well. Bottom line, it's more expensive to run your pool as well. Even though you're saving money with electricity, with the VS pump, you're still paying more for gas. And to be honest with you, the energy savings of a VS pump aren't going to be the factor of you putting a pool in or you buying a house at a pool. It's really not something people think about. It's something after the fact when it's like, oh yeah, I saved, 40 or 50 bucks on my electricity bill with this VS pump. That's good. $600 or $800 a year. That's not something to take lightly, but it's not something that I think would be the main motivator. Now, water costs, I think a pool doesn't use as much water as people think it does. Now, yes, there's evaporation. Depending on the size of the pool, you use more water than if it's bigger than a smaller pool. But realistically, I think the biggest water usage is your irrigation, the sprinkler system in your house. If you have a pretty big yard or you have plants, you're going to use more water to keep those plants from turning brown or the grass from dying. So I believe irrigation probably uses more water than the pool. However, having a pool back there, you do have to fill it, and it's going to cost you money because you're using the water. I think those are all pretty secondary costs: electricity, gas, and water. There's really no way to kind of break that up unless you had your pool equipment on a separate, electric meter. That way you can see how much you're actually using. The way electricity is charged in my area is that the whole house is being billed. Your air conditioner, your refrigerator, your pool, your washer and dryer, all that goes into the cost of that month's electricity. I think the real expense for the pool is your maintenance expense. When you hire a company to take care of your pool, it's going to cost you money. Depending on your area, it could be anywhere from $140 to over $250 or $300 a month for pool service. Again, that's area dependent and the price is different in different areas. Add that together and it's quite a lot of money. If you think about doing it yourself, you have the added cost of the chemicals that I mentioned that have gone up over 100% over the last 4 years. And that's a big factor as well, and an issue that you have to kind of consider. And then the time involved. So here's one thing that no one really talks about much. And of course, you can hire someone to take care of the pool, and that alleviates your time. But the time involved in taking care of the pool, depending on how the pool is set up and how much maintenance it requires, could be a factor that, believe it or not, you're actually better off hiring somebody in some cases than doing it yourself. I know that sounds weird, but if you're a doctor or if you're a lawyer or if you're someone who makes, $45 or $60 an hour, it may be cheaper for you to spend your time doing your profession and hiring someone to maintain the pool. It also alleviates a lot of the headache and problems, and it's something that is logical in some cases. Now, you can do it yourself, but you need that element, which is time, and knowledge, of course, is important. Because if you do ruin your pool, and this is something that I always tell the guys when they're doing the pool school, which is if they're working with the builder on a startup, they need to educate the customer that you can really ruin the pool, especially within the first 6 months or 8 months of having that pool built. And there's, of course, different degrees of this happening. If the pH gets too low, then the pool heater can start to bleed copper into the pool, staining it. Of course, you've ruined the heater and you've also stained the pool. A lot of that can be corrected with a new heater by draining the pool and acid washing the pool. So these things are correctable. Sometimes the plaster, if you have a lot of etching in there from having bad chemistry, you can sand that plaster down. And it does take effort and it is a lot of manual labor. But a lot of the stuff you do to the pool can be reversible. It's just a really expensive thing when you don't take care of it. And it's something that adds up to the cost of having that pool. And if it gets to the point where you have to replaster the pool, that's a pretty major expense. So hiring someone can mitigate some of those expenses and headaches, and that costs money as well. Maintaining yourself, buying the chemicals, spending time cleaning the pool costs money as well, and takes your time away from your regular profession, which again may be better to focus on rather than taking care of your own pool. And last, the equipment does wear out and it is an added expense. So if you didn't have a pool, you wouldn't have to be buying a pool filter or a heater or a new pump. Is something that's kind of logical. But since you have that pool, you'll have to do that. And you may have problems also that really accelerate these things and accelerate the cost, like a pipe that breaks in the cement. I've had many pools that were leaking water and they have to do a big investigation to find out where it's at. Sometimes they dig up the whole deck to fix it. Sometimes it's a crack in the pool itself causing the water to leak. So these are all things that can happen, not super common and not something to lose sleep over, but your pool could develop a crack one day. The pipe could be installed wrong, the PVC pipe, and that could crack as well. And this would be a pretty major expense. So that is something that does happen to a small percentage of customers. They have a problem with their pool that they have to pay for. So keep that in mind as well. The pool is not something that you just put in or buy with an existing home and you can forget about it. It really takes a lot of effort. And of course, if you are in the industry, you know that it takes a lot of effort to keep certain pools blue and running and functioning. And there is that expense of upgrading the equipment if it's old, replacing the equipment when it gets old, the cost of chemicals, the cost of any kind of repairs that may be necessary. So I'm not discouraging you from getting a pool. I wouldn't do that. But I would say that you should go in with your eyes open, knowing that this is something that's going to increase your expenses. Yes, there's the fun factor and the entertainment factor of it. Just like any luxury item, there's a plus to it, but there's also a minus or a downside to something like a pool. And I would say if you go into a house that you're purchasing with a pool and you know all this ahead of time, you're good. And if you're building a pool, you should know all this ahead of time as well, because you're not just spending the money on the project itself. There's the cost afterwards you have to factor in to, is the pool worth it? Can you maintain it? Can you afford it after it's built? These are all important factors to think about. Looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, on the podcast icon on the banner. Click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu of 1,600 podcasts there for you. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.